This is Margaret from the blog Don't Call It Bollywood, and this is my weekly box office post. This is the week Soorma came out, which is the thing I'm most interested in. Sanju is still going strong in week 3. It's at about $1,500 per screen in America on a little over 200 screens. The $1,500 per screen is fairly normal for the third week of a movie that does well at all. The over 200 screens is not normal, so it's a good sign for Sanju that it's still doing fairly strong on that many screens. It's also a sign of this is where the high box office is coming from, this very, very large number of screens. If it was a smaller number of screens, $1,500 per screen is telling me that Sanju would not be doing as well. And it's doing about the same worldwide. In the average zone for week 3 on a largish number of screens, which tells me on a smaller number of screens, it would still be in the average zone per screen and probably would not be doing as well. So that's Sanju. Now we're done with it. Moving on, Soorma. Here's what surprised me about Soorma. It is not doing as well as I thought it would. In America, it's doing whatever. It's like $3,000 per screen, $4,000 per screen, which is about what I would expect. We don't really know Diljit Dosanjh that well, and Sanju is still extremely popular in America, as it has been all along. No biggie. I was most interested in the Canada and Australia figures for Soorma, because those are places where Punjabi films tend to do very well. And this is a film with a Punjabi star and a Punjabi topic. And it is not doing as well as I thought it would. In Canada, it's making about $6,000 per screen, which would be very good in most places. But in Canada, films tend to do a lot better than that per screen. And it's just not. Especially for a Punjabi film, this is remarkably low. In Australia, same kind of thing. Opening week per screen tends to be extremely high. It's only making around $4,000 in Australia. Very surprising. And the same is happening in New Zealand as well. I think there's a couple of different factors going on. As I said, in America, it's primarily that Sanju is still the big hit, and Punjabi films never tend to do that well in this market anyway. But in Canada, there's something else going on. There was another Punjabi film, an actual Punjabi film made from the Punjabi industry with Punjabi stars that came out last week, and it is doing about $8,000 per screen. Still slightly less than I've seen from Punjabi films in Canada before. They've easily hit $10,000 per screen. But more than Soorma, which is telling me that Soorma ended up losing audience, as did this other film, To Soorma. In Australia, both Punjabi films are not doing well, Soorma and the other one. But in fact, none of the films released this week are doing that well in the Australian or the New Zealand market, which made me think, what the heck is going on this weekend that people aren't going to movies? Oh, right, World Cup. So, poor Soorma is struggling because it's released while Sanju is still fairly successful. It released opposite a Punjabi movie, and it released the weekend of the World Cup finals. The Punjabi film is also struggling because it released opposite Soorma, and it released the weekend of the World Cup finals. What this is telling me is there's more factors that go into having a truly global market than it might appear. Soorma was scheduled and rescheduled multiple times to avoid conflicting release dates. And it did that. It avoided conflicting release dates. It has a weekend all to itself. It's a good 3 weeks after Sanju came out, and it's a good week before Dhadak. Great. So long as all you're looking at is the Hindi film market, then it has the perfect release date. But you can't limit yourself to that. So maybe Soorma isn't releasing that, well, it's releasing all over India. So it's not entirely focused on just the Punjabi market in India. But when you get overseas, there's not that geographical distance between the Punjabi market and all the other markets. You are competing with all the other markets in India simultaneously, and if your audience swings towards one more than the other, you have to be aware of what regional film might be coming out that week in the same language as the audience that you want. And so Soorma needed to be looking at not just Sanju, but also the Punjabi release schedule and trying to avoid a conflict there. And in the same way, the Punjabi filmmakers need to start looking at the Hindi release schedule and see if there's a conflict there. Not just something like Sanju, not just something that's an all the way across everything hit, but something like Soorma that's a very targeted hit that is targeting the same audience as them. And then, of course, there's World Cup. the Hindi film industry is increasingly good at avoiding IPL in India, partly because IPL is massively popular and people aren't going to movies, and also because IPL has such a strong Hindi film industry flavor to it. A lot of the movie stars and people who might be promoting films are instead promoting cricket-related things. But it doesn't seem to have fully grasped that it also can't conflict with World Cup, can't conflict with these major worldwide sports events or other entertainment events. Maybe doesn't want to conflict with a Hollywood movie at this point, since they're releasing towards such similar markets. So that's what's going on with Soorma. It's doing surprisingly poorly in the areas that should be its basic hit, the Punjabi flavored international market. And that's because it hadn't considered all of the factors that relate to the Punjabi international market. And in the same way, the Punjabi film that released this week also didn't consider all of those factors. Sanju, possibly, is the only one that did. It released well before World Cup, well after Eid. Two major international events that affect all the places in the world. And it's that kind of smart business savvy that is driving Sanju to be such a global hit. It's got a large number of screens, it has a good release date that takes everything into account, and it's got a nice sort of watered down story that you can understand and appreciate no matter where you're from in India or the world. Anyway, that's how it looks to me. You can agree, you can disagree, just leave me a comment on my blog. There's a link right below. Thanks. Bye.